Hi, this is Sung and I'm the Principal and Director of Sky Academy, and in this episode we'll be looking at a brand new topic. It's the topic of plane geometry, which is a category of mathematics within the 2-unit course, and there will be quite a few questions on geometry or plane geometry in the course. But I do want to distinguish plane geometry from another form of geometry which is also in the course, which is called coordinate geometry. Coordinate geometry deals with lines, points, curves, etc. on the number plane. So remember the number plane, which has an x-axis and a y-axis on it, okay? And you're looking at points and lines on the number plane. That's called coordinate geometry. Plane geometry deals with the same sort of thing, points, lines, segments, etc., which I'll go through the definition of, but in the context of plane and empty space. Okay, so you've got no number plane to speak of. All right. So this branch of mathematics was established by a guy called Euclid, and it's oftentimes known as Euclidean geometry, okay? And a lot of these definitions derive from Euclid himself, and they're called the Euclidean definitions for each of these things. So for example, what I want to go through in this particular episode is what a point is, an interval is, a ray, a line, and an angle is. Okay, so let's go through Euclid's definitions of each one of these. These aren't word for word, and you don't need to know them word for word. You just need to know what they are, how to use them, etc. Okay, so let's start with a point. Okay, so this basically is a way of denoting a position. Okay, it tells us the position of a point, I suppose, and it has no area, it takes up no space, right? But it is a position of space on the number plane, right? So the way that we kind of represent points is by putting a dot. And if you think about it, a dot, right, is not really a point, because if you look at that dot, it does take up, even though it's minuscule, it takes up space and it takes up area or volume, okay, if you're working in 3D dimension. Alright, so that dot isn't a point, but it represents a point, okay, which is the main thing. And oftentimes we give points a name, and for example, we might call that point A, right? So we put a dot which represents the point, plus a little A underneath it or to the side of it or very close to it to show us that that point there is a point that we're going to call point A. Okay? If we have another point somewhere else nearby to it, and we call that point B, we can actually produce, now what would you call that? Now most people would say, oh, that's a line, yeah? But according to Euclidean geometry, it's not a line just yet, all right? It could become a line, but it's what we call an interval, all right? And an interval is the shortest distance between 2 points. In this case, our 2 points are A and B, made up of infinite number of points in between, right? From a start point, which is A, to an end point, which is B, right? So you would have this interval, we would call it AB, right? And we can call it AB like that. Or we could just as easily call this point, or call this interval BA, and they would be the same thing. AB would be the same as BA. Alright? It's the same way of naming, it's different ways of naming the same interval. Okay? Now, the third thing that we can look at is what we call a ray. And a ray is basically where we take one of these points as our starting point, move through the other point, and keep going infinitely or indefinitely in that direction. Alright, so let's have a look at what I've written up on the board. It's where an interval extends from a starting point and continues infinitely in a particular direction. So it just keeps going and going and going. So this ray starts at A, goes through B, and keeps going. Okay, so we can call this ray A, B, and we put a little arrow there to show that it's the ray AB. Now, just like in this interval, we can go in both directions, AB or BA. Now, is the ray BA the same as the ray AB? Have a think about it. Is the ray AB the same as the ray BA? Alright? If you thought about it carefully, alright, and you've kind of racked your brain a little bit and done all that philosophical and mathematical mumbo jumbo, then you should find that BA actually goes in this direction, doesn't it? So it's not the same as AB. The ray BA starts at B and goes through A and goes indefinitely in that direction through it. Alright? So can you see that the ray AB and BA are not the same thing, right? But these two are the same, right? The interval AB is the same as the interval BA, but the ray AB is not the same as the ray BA. Got it? Now, I did say that we would consider what a line is, right? And a line is where it actually goes in both directions. It goes through A all the way through and through B all the way through. So it actually looks like this. Alright? Does that make sense? So you got point A here, you got point B here, and a line goes infinitely in that direction through A and infinitely in this direction through B, and you don't have to draw an infinite line, okay, because that will take quite a fair bit of time. But what you can do is put an arrow on the ends, and that will tell you, right, that you're dealing with line AB, which is also the same as the line BA. These are the same thing. The final thing that I want to go through is what an angle is. And an angle is the change in direction from one interval, ray or line, to another interval, ray or line, at a point that is common to both. So if you have, for example, two rays and they share a common point, okay? So let me just put this to the side. So if you have, and that interval, and just say that interval is starts at X, they share a common point Y, and they go through the point Z, right? Then the change in direction from this interval to this interval, right, is called its angle, right? And you can call that angle whatever you like. You can call it theta, right? And theta would represent the measurement of that angle. And of course you know that we measure angles in degrees. But to name that angle there, we can go through a couple of things. We can call that angle X, Y, Z, and we put a little angle sign there. Or another way of writing that is X, Y, Z with a little angle on the top, a little hat on the top. Alright? They're the same, they're different ways of expressing the same thing, X, Y, Z, or the angle X, Y, Z. Alright, one with an angle sign there, one with an angle sign there. Or the other way that you can express it is Z, Y, X, or Z, Y, X, right? Angle sign there, angle sign there. Now the important thing is that the point where the angle is should be in the middle. The point where the angle is should be in the middle, okay? Because that's where the change in direction is measured from, alright? And it starts at point X and ends at point Z, in this particular case, or it starts at point Z and ends at point X, in this particular case. But either way, you're going to measure the same angle, right? Now, I will mention another point. See how at point Y, there are no other angles except that angle there, right? So we can call that angle y by itself, because there are no other angles that it could be, except the reflex angle, of course, all right? But oftentimes, we can just call that angle y, or we can call it angle y going this way as well, okay? So that's the, that is basically angles. So we've gone through what a point is, what an interval is, what a ray is, what a line is, and what an angle is, and that basically sets us up very nicely to work with Euclidean geometry or plane geometry, okay? And like I said before, you don't have to know the definitions, you don't have to know them, but you do have to be, well, you don't have to be able to recite them like verbatim as like a parrot, okay? But you do have to know them well enough that you can go, oh yeah, that's a line, oh that's an interval, or that's a an angle, etc., and be able to communicate effectively with it. Because a lot of what you will do with plane geometry is to be able to talk through step by step how to solve a geometrical problem using the language of points, intervals, rays, lines, and angles. Okay? So you should be able to, you need to know the definitions well enough to be able to communicate what you're trying to say and know exactly what you're trying to say. So you're not saying that an interval is a line or a line is an interval, etc. You need to know that well enough. Okay? So that concludes our first episode. Thank you very much for watching.